So this is your heart. So what I like to do is really pictographically relate things in my mind, so that I have an unbelievably simple, like grade school understanding of something that I try to remember over and over and over again. And so what I do is I like to create drawings that I could put on my note card the day of the exam. And this is something that you probably don't need the day of the exam because you're going to be so strong with it, but it'll help you kind of as a reference in your mind before your exam date. So the trick to understanding cardiovascular questions is understanding kind of like where things are. So this is like the manubrium, and this is your like sternum. Do you guys know like generally where the sternum is? And it's in the chest. It's in the anterior part of the chest. And so this is a person whose right arm is here and left arm is here, very poorly drawn. Okay. And so I wouldn't draw the manubrium. I wouldn't draw the arms. You can draw the arms if you want, but that's where it is. It's in front of the heart, and the heart kind of rests in this pattern where the anterior part of the heart is right there behind the sternum. And this thing that they keep referring to as the mediastinum is the space between your lungs. So your right, your left lung, there's a space there, anterior, posterior, left and right. Mediastinum refers to just the space in your thoracic cavity that is enclosed by the chest wall, in the sides of your lungs, and so between them. And so here we have a heart kind of laid out where this is the right ventricle, and this is the right atrium, and this is the left ventricle kind of in the back, and this left atrium, sorry, and this is the left ventricle in the back. So one of the ways to remember that the left ventricle is in the back is to remember that when you have a recurrent laryngeal nerve that's passing behind the left atrium, and you have a mitral stenosis, then you run the risk of getting Ortner syndrome with dilation of your left atrium, and you get hoarseness because you have a lesion on your recurrent laryngeal nerve, which innervates your larynx during speech. And so that's one of the ways to remember that the left atrium is in the back, is to remember that you get Ortner syndrome from mitral stenosis or anything that could dilate your left atrium, and it causes hoarseness. And so what we're doing right now is we're trying to chart out like murmurs for your heart. And so do you guys know which intercostal space you would hear the atrial sounds? The fourth? So does anybody, so I'm thinking, so I think it's the second intercostal space. So one of the things, I think you're thinking about kind of like the tricuspid mitral kind of areas, but it's good. This is like super good to remember. So I just write a 2 here, and I write like 4 or 5. Usually people say 5 intercostal space. It differs depending on the size of the chest cavity, because the internal contents doesn't know where the ribs are. It's just falling where it does ontologically, which means developmentally. And so you have an ICS this is the 5th intercostal space, which is to say it's the space, so you have a first rib, right, potentially, behind your kind of sternum, behind your clavicle. And then your second rib kind of comes out of your spine, your vertebrae, and then the second intercostal space is the space not between your first and your second rib, but between your second and your third. And so this is between your 5th and your 6th, right? And so what you're doing is you're saying, okay, Well, if this is, so do you guys know the mnemonic, all people take money? Do you guys know that mnemonic?
I've heard that all physicians take money.
Yeah, all physicians take money. Yeah, that's a great mnemonic. And I would even say,
apartment M.
You what?
Apartment M.
Oh, apartment M. Oh, I like that a lot. I wonder if I can fit that in because apartment. I almost want to make a different word because between the P and the T, I think there should be an L for left sternal border, right? So we can try to make a mnemonic here. You can even say, you know, Apple TM, like trademark for Apple.
All physicians love taking money.
Yeah, yeah. So I like that. You should write that in the chat so I can add it later. But so we have the atrial sounds here, and so I'm going to clear up some space just so it's clean, because I really like to make my diagrams as simple and stupid as possible. Like absolutely as simple as stupid as possible, so I can really draw them in my mind without taking a pen to paper. So this is going to be your A, P. So what people mean by that mnemonic is, they mean all people take money is aortic, pulmonary, tricuspid, mitral. And so that's like you want to be doing, like, you know people say in Christianity they do the Holy Ghost, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. You want to be doing that on your chest. You want to be saying all people. So on the right, second intercostal space, sternal border. You want to be saying all people, aortic, pulmonary. These are where the sounds are, by the way. These are not where the valves are. But when those valves close, they make sounds, and you want to be able to identify where they are. So second intercostal space next to the sternum, all aortic. Then second intercostal space next to the sternum on the left, sternal border, you're going to say people, right? And then fifth intercostal space, you're going to say take, which is tricuspid, sound, right? And then if you go further left on your body, this is anatomical left, then you're going to get the mitral area. So how do you depict this pictographically? Because this is actually the patient's left, right? And this is the patient's right. I'm sorry. This is the patient's left. This is the patient's right. I'm dysgraphic, guys, so sometimes I draw things funny, but I will get it right. So this is a right side of the heart. This is the left side of the heart. So here you go. This is the pulmonary area. Okay, manubrium's here, and then this is take, tricuspid area. It's left sternal border. Everything's on the left, guys, of the sternum, and then between these two is actually the left sternal border, which we'll talk about, and here's the mitral area. So I draw these stars out like really simply, so that I have a good indication. So what I've done is I've drawn a potato, I have the star, and I draw out just the front. I draw out the right ventricle and the right atrium. Then what I do is I draw out the pulmonary and the tricuspid down here, and then I draw in the left sternal border. So this is the real value of this depiction. Now I'm going to tell you why I do this in my mind. This area is the atrial. Which murmurs are we going to hear here?
Aortic regurg.
Exactly. We are going to hear aortic regurg. What else? By the way, is aortic regurg diastolic or systolic? It's diastolic. So the reason you really want to pay attention to whether something's diastolic or systolic is because all diastolic murmurs are pathological. So aortic regurg, and you're going to have aortic stenosis. I'm just going to make this quick. So aortic stenosis, right? And so I don't want to write that out. I don't want to think that hard. Okay, so I want to really quickly in my test. I want to think if it's at the aortic area, it's all of the aortic murmurs will be here. So I'm just going to say all A's. Really simple, all A's. There is an exception to this, but that's the point. Is you're going to try to only remember the exceptions because you're going to know the basics really well. So you only have to remember the exceptions, then you'll really be strong on test day. So what will be here? All of the P's. And there's one exception to this, and that's the only thing you're going to need to remember. All the P's. So all people take. So now we're at the tricuspid area. We're going to skip the left sternal border for now. Tricuspid area. It's all of the T's. And then in the mitral area, it's all the A's. All the M's. And so the only things that you need to remember in addition to these murmurs is, with very, there are scruples to get into, but that you'll get through them in UWorld much more easily if you know your basics. And this is 99.9% of the questions are going to have references to these. Is that the pulmonary area is, where is the pulmonary area? It's at the top of the sternum, okay? And people kind of think of the atrium as the top of the heart, okay? What's really true is this is deeper, this side is deeper than this side of the heart. So this mitral area is actually anterior, and this is the posterior part of the heart. And this kind of goes off to the left. So people think the heart's in the center of your chest, it's not. So if this is the sternum, then this is the very far left of your heart actually. Midclavicular line, fifth intercostal space, right? And so this is going to be all ASDs. Atrial septal defects. It's good that I make mistakes so you can see me write it 3 million times. ASDs, and then at the tricuspid area, you're going to have all VSDs, right? So the ventricle is kind of at the bottom, and the atrium is kind of at the top. So now you have only 2 exceptions to remember. You really have to remember the ASDs are here, and the VSDs are here. It's kind of easy because the atrium's above the ventricle. And this heart sound is above, ASD is above the VSD, right? This is just a mnemonic. So it is possible to have a VSD that has Eisenmenger, which is when the shunt goes from left to right. And we won't cover that today, but you should learn what Eisenmenger is. And when it's a right to left shunt, you wind up getting a slight murmur at the mitral area with VSDs. You can. So that's another exception to remember. So this encompasses mitral stenosis, mitral regurg, and mitral valve prolapse, right? But this left sternal border also needs to be handled, and that has your 2 things that are kind of these are diastolic murmurs, so they're always pathological. So it's high yield if it's pathological, right? It's more important to memorize. So you have 2 forms of regurg. You have 2 forms of regurg. You have aortic regurg, and you have pulmonary regurg. Okay? So that is to say that the pulmonary area is kind of like lacking, right? It's missing one. But do you guys know the difference between this aortic regurg and this aortic regurg? This is a hard one.
The intensity of the murmur.
It's what?
Intensity of the murmur.
Well, I actually, that's a good question. I think the intensity will depend on many different dynamic kind of physical components. It's a good, I like the way that you're thinking because you're answering questions thoughtfully, knowing the physiology and trying to use the physiology to answer the question, which is exactly what you need to do. You need to be principled and not memorize things, because the test is too big to memorize everything. But in this case, the difference is in kind and not in intensity. So this is aortic regurg up here has to do with cardiovascular causes, and aortic regurg down here is still cardiovascular, but it's valvular. So if you had a cardiogenic cause of aortic regurg, then you would have it up here. Like one form of aortic regurg happens when you have a ascending aortic dissection, at which point you would have you could get overloaded, right? The problem is that your intima of your aorta is filling with blood, and then that blood is weighing down part of the lining of the heart of the aorta, such that it actually obscures the aortic valve and causes there to be an insufficiency such that the valves were opening because of the bulge, and blood is flowing back into the ventricle during diastole. So diastolic murmur. We have a valvular form of aortic regurg that would happen when the valvular cause of the regurg. So this aortic dissection cause is actually going to happen here at the aortic area, which is where you'd expect it. But if you had a valvular cause like aortic regurg that is the result of rheumatic heart disease, or if you had infective endocarditis, it's a rarer place to have it, but if you did have it there, you would expect the murmur to be closer to the left sternal border. It could be here, but it's more likely to be in the left sternal border. So the only other thing to remember in terms of locations, and I'm going to redraw this, guys, so I'm just going to make it clean later, but Hokum will happen at the left sternal border. So if you have a murmur from Hokum, which is a guy who has like a beta myosin light chain problem that's genetic, he has family history of sudden cardiac death, and he's like 22 and he like passes out on a football field, that's a classic guy who would have a murmur at this point between the tricuspid murmurs and the pulmonary murmurs. So, if I were to create a new whiteboard, sorry for that, but I'm gonna draw everything kind of cleanly now, and I actually have the old one. If you want, you can message me and I'll add it. It's not letting me draw though. Let me draw. So let's go back and see if it'll let me draw. I'm going to start a new whiteboard, guys, because it's that easy. Alright, so share. Alright, so now here we are. So we have a potato. Okay, usually I draw it like this to make room for the pulmonary so it's nice and pretty. I draw the front two most compartments. This is the right atrium, this is the right ventricle, right? And then I have what comes out of the right ventricle? It's the pulmonary artery. So pulmonic arteries leave the heart. And then over that, I draw an aorta. Because that's it. This is the more anatomical representation of the heart. And it tells you that this is the front and this is the back, right? So then you draw your stars. I got a star here. On both ends, I got a star. Okay. This is the right, this is the left. And I got my pulmonary area. All people take money, right? And then right in the middle, I'm going to put an extra one, which is the left sternal border. Okay, and the only weird ones are we have, diastolically, we have AR, valvular, and we have PR, and then we have Hokum. The only weird one in the pulmonary area is going to be ASD. The only weird one in the tricuspid area is going to be a VSD. And there's also a weird one here, which is VSD2, right? But this only happens in a really specific physiological change where you have a right to left shunt called Eisenmenger, where your right ventricle is getting stronger and it changes the flow. And that's it, guys. That's it. So now you're drawing the stupid potato in your mind, and you have one, I consider this one because it's easy to remember. It's pulmonary regurgitation, aortic regurgitation. 2, HOCM. 3, VSD. 4, ASD. And if you want to remember this one's very nuanced. You can remember that VSDs sometimes move right to left. But that changes it to a amount of memorization that is reasonable to get started on cardiac questions and get 99.9% of the murmur questions done. So you don't have to worry about it on test day. Knowing where your murmurs are should be like instantaneous, guys. Like really instantaneous. So sorry for that huge lecture in the beginning. I'm gonna let Saeed into the room for now, and let's get started on actually playing the game if you guys want to. Was that helpful? Let me know in the surveys if you guys feel like these are helping, and we will either continue or discontinue on the basis of that. So I'll get the game fired up, and then I will share my screen. Alright, just one moment. Alright. And I'll get to Zoom and share real quick. Share screens. Alright, so this is the game. Just to introduce people to the game, this is a multiplayer Step 1 preparatory video game that's going to be released in a few months. It's going to allow you guys as beta testers to kind of join us in these videos and play along with us while we're answering questions as teammates. And we will also allow you guys to have your own kind of games. It functions as a Q bank. It's not a primary resource. It's like a resource to socialize and gamify medicine, but I think it could be used as a primary resource. It just isn't intended to be that way at onset. We have like 9,000 questions. I think if all you did was study those questions, you do fine on your exam. And the frequency with which we answer questions when you actually aren't talking and explaining things is actually pretty high. So here we have like the menu screen, and we're going to start a new game. It really is a Q bank. If you look at the game reviews, you can see that there are real questions, real explanations. So let's get started. Alright. And so, new games. So do you guys have a preference as to... So hello, Sayeda. I think we saw you last week. Are you here?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hello.
Okay, great. Are you open to answering questions this week?
Yeah, today I'm open.
Okay, great. Alright, welcome. Thank you. Where are you coming from, by the way?
I'm from Pakistan.
Okay, welcome. I asked everybody when we started, so I just wanted to see.
Thank you.
So, Rowenda, do we have the random names ready?
Yes.
Okay, alright. So, I'm going to choose a ranger this week, if you guys don't mind, but you can choose any number of players. And I'm going to make sure that we have Group C, Step 1, as our name here. Oh, well, I have a dwarf because I hit enter. So let's start a new game here. So, Group C.
Hey, I have a quick question. Is this available? Is it still beta phase?
It is. Is it beta phase?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is this available for anyone to join? Is it a subscription package, or because it seems pretty cool?
You like it? You like it? Oh man, that's great to hear. Absolutely, it's going to be subscription based, and we're kind of a grassroots video game right now. So like the more support we can get in terms of getting the word out and having people join these meetings, especially because our YouTube channel is a big way to grow it. the better. And so we will be releasing soon, like within like 3 weeks or so. We should have a version of the game that you can hop on and use. It won't be totally ready, but if you get on it early, you pay much less, and we just keep developing it. It keeps getting better for you, and it'll remember the questions you answered, like the QBank. So it's not like you're starting over in your USMLE prep. The idea is to take the burden of these long hours where your score isn't that great, and kind of offload it to a video game where you can meet your friends and have fun. So thank you for asking. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, awesome.
Could you send the YouTube link on the in the chat?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'll definitely share the link with my friends in my group.
Oh man, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Munib. So here we are. We're an archer. Some of the ways that it works. This is stage 1, day 1. We have these action points here, which is the green. They're separated into eventually they're going to be. You're going to have like 100 action points to start with, and you're going to have to spend as if you were spending money. You'd have to spend action points in order to do anything in the game. So the idea is that you click on a square and it tells you what's there. Sometimes there'll be a dead, enemy. Sometimes there'll be items, and so you have to look around. So you have vision points. Once you use 3 vision points, you actually use an action point, and so you are unable to move when you run out of action points, unable to attack when you use action points, and so you have to buy vision points. So you only have so much time. Think of action points as time. You only have so much time to look around before you've spent an action point. So in order to get action points, you have to answer a question. And then you have an inventory here, and we have some skills. Usually I would press escape to do that. So I'm going to buy some skills real quick. Usually you'd earn skills as you gain levels. And so I'm just going to make sure that we have a ton of damage here. So I'm going to put this in the second slot for my skills, the first slot to keep people away. Those icons are going to change. And then I'm going to upgrade this a little bit and put this in the third spell spot. So now, I'm going to have to remember not to hit escape. Now we have spells and we have items. I'm going to click out of this. And if I were to move, it would reveal tiles within the coordinate grid, and it would spend an action point. So eventually this is going to be multiplayer. You're going to have other people playing around with you, and the sooner you answer questions, the better, because you're trying to survive. This player was just born, and it will die when the game ends. So your whole team dies, and there's actually things to do after you die if you're in multiplayer. There will be day and night, there will be hunger and thirst, so there's a lot going on. So here we have an enemy. It's a tiny snake. I use a vision point to see it. We haven't named the characters' enemies very well, so it says snake tiny. But so I want to move here, but because I'm an archer, if I look at my attacks, I actually can't attack nearby unless it's this kick. And I don't want to kick him because it doesn't do that much damage, so we're going to have to answer a question. So Rowenda, do you have a random name for us?
Yes. Our first participant is Shireen.
Shireen, okay. Shireen, are you here?
Hi.
Hello.
Ready?
Okay, great. We're going to answer a question together. Don't be nervous. We get questions.
It's like RuneScape.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping that people would get the impression of. I wanted simple art and strong mechanics for the game, so it's easy to develop. So I love that you make that association, because that's what I was going for. Are you ready to? We're going to try to answer a question together.
Okay.
Do you want to read, or do you want me to read?
Anything.
Okay. I'll ask.